Do you think that you could write a sefer that sells over 2,000 copies? Do you think that you could launch a Torah website that gets over 10,000 visitors every single month? Well, today's guest, Marc Lesnick, did both of those things. In this episode, you will hear how he did it, how you can do it, and you will hear some remarkable stories about one of the Gadolei Hador. My name is Yaakov Wolf, and this is Dark Pink. Shalom Aleichem, Marc Lesnick. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
You have a very interesting blend of both Torah and business in your life, but maybe we could start with a little bit of background about your family, the home you grew up in, and your father's inspiration that he gave you as a role model growing up as a kid.
Absolutely. My father, definitely a role model. He got smicha at, he studied in Chaim Berlin, then got smicha from Rav Gussman. He actually was brought up in a home that wasn't Shomer Shabbos and sort of brought that to his family. But then later in life, he started his own business, which was a successful business. He was the CEO of the company. And he still would get home at a decent hour, and he would learn for several hours every night. And he gave shiurim in the community. And, I remember always just admiring his commitment to really both worlds. And that's something that I guess he kind of stuck in my DNA, and I try to emulate the balance that he had in his life, and still does. Thank God he's still working and giving shiurim and learning whenever he can.
Wow. And as far as your professional journey, maybe you could just give us a little bit of that background. Maybe start with the interesting advice that Aaron Lichtenstein gave you when you were a young man, and how that transformed into what your career ended up being today.
Okay. So I guess I grew up in Brooklyn. I grew up in Flatbush, spent a year and a half studying in the Gush after high school, and sort of fell in love with Eretz Yisrael that year. And before I left, I had about an hour meeting with Rav Aaron Lichtenstein, the Rosh Yeshiva, one of the Rosh Yeshiva. And I sat down with the Rav, and one of the questions I asked him, and I was very sincere, I said, listen, Rav, I definitely want to move to Eretz Yisrael, and I'm going to university now. And people are telling me that I should become a dentist. Because if you're a dentist, you can basically, you make a nice living in Israel, it's privatized, and you also can have time to learn. You can set your own hours. And I said, so Rav, what do you think? Should I become a dentist? And Rav Lichtenstein sort of cracked a smile, started giggling. And for me, I was like surprised because I haven't seen him smile that much. I mean, he was a wonderful individual, but not the guy that joked around too much. And he was the most serious question of my life. And he kind of looked at me and he said, listen, I can't tell you what to do. All I can tell you is you need to pick a profession that you enjoy. And if you enjoy it, you'll be good at it and you'll be successful. And I walked out of the room and I was a little disappointed. I was like, here's the Gadol Hador, and he didn't tell me anything. And I went back to YU, and only years later did I really understand what he had said, because a number of my friends all wanted to go into business, and we took I forget what it's called, even the GREs, whatever, to get into business school. And at the time, this was in 87, the stock market crashed. I think it was called Black Monday. And a whole bunch of my friends that were going to go into business decided to go to law because the legal profession was taking care of the reorganizations and the bankruptcies, and you can make a nice salary. And almost all of them, within 3 or 4 years, left the profession. They were miserable. It hit me that Rav Lichtenstein basically gave the most amazing advice to someone starting out a career. And that is, don't pick something because you think you could make money or you think you could have time to learn. Not because it's convenient, but you have to be passionate about what you do. You wake up every day and you want to be happy and you want to feel satisfied. And friends of mine who even went into chinuch started out as teachers, they became principals, and based on the tuition that they didn't have to pay, they ended up net the same amount of money as others that went into other professional careers. So actually, thank God for myself, I'm in a career today that I really enjoy what I'm doing, and I look forward to going to work. And I think that's the best advice I can give anyone who's selecting a profession. It has to be something that you're passionate about, that you enjoy, and then you'll be good at it because you're going to give it your all. If you don't like it, you're going to cut corners and you won't be good.
So at that time, what was it that you were pulled to, and what career trajectory did you end up taking based on that?
So because my father had this sort of family business, I was always thinking of going to business, but I'm kind of a pretty conservative person personality-wise, and I said, let me get a law degree because that's something you can always fall back on. And a lot of, I would say, CEOs of larger companies, a lot of them have law degrees. I felt like it would help me understand the transactional aspects. So I decided to get a law degree, and I worked at a large law firm, Gadol, for a number of years. But because I knew I wanted to move to Israel, I selected that firm because they did a lot of Israel work. And it kind of led me on a path where after about 5 years, I was able to make the move to invest in banking and then to venture capital and eventually to private equity, which is what I've been doing for the last 20 years.
And what about it do you enjoy so much?
Especially being in Israel. I mean, I'm a partner at a private equity fund in Israel. We moved to Israel in 97, and I started at Fortissimo when we founded it in 2004. So it's been about 20 years now. And what I like about private equity in particular is in venture capital, I mean, I like investments. I like building companies. And in venture capital, it's very risky. You have an idea, and it looks great on paper, and it could be worth $1 billion, or it might go bankrupt, and you might hit 1 out of 10. When it comes to private equity, we're dealing with companies that are much more mature, and so we're helping build them. It's a question of how we get this company from $10 million in revenue to $100 million in revenue. And I can say that, thank God, over the last 20 years, we've invested in over 60 companies. And I say invested, usually we take a controlling interest. So we're very active in the companies, and I feel like we made a contribution. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of employees in Israel, and I feel like we've contributed significantly even to the economy. So it's fun when you can take a company and help build it into something, and you feel like you're doing good for the employees and for the country.
That's great. So I want to transition to the meat of our conversation, which is about your very important efforts in bringing the Torah of Rav Asher Weiss to thousands of people and the Torah of Rav Shalom Rosner to thousands of people, all while being a partner and an investor and a businessman as well. So maybe just to start from the beginning, when did you first get in touch and get connected with Rav Asher Weiss and with Rav Rosner?
Okay, so Rav Weiss, actually, I think it was about 12 years ago even, we were on a family vacation in Switzerland, and it was one of these kosher programs, and actually the Rav who was there for, I guess, a 2-week period was Rav Asher Weiss. And I wasn't really familiar with Rav Weiss at the time. I had heard some of the shiurim. A friend of mine took me to one of the shiurim. But basically, we were hiking the Alps with my family every day. And then at night, after dinner, there was a shiur by Rav Weiss. And my sons and myself were just blown away by the shiurim. They were just unbelievable. And after every shiur, I would go over and discuss it with Rav Weiss, and sort of developed a relationship with him throughout that time period. And the day that we were leaving, I remember going to Rav Weiss and saying, "Listen, Rav, what am I going to do without your Torah? We're going back. The vacation's over. This was unbelievable. It filled such a void in my life. I don't know what we're going to do without it." And he said, "Look," he called me Shai by my Hebrew name, and he said, "Listen, I give shiurim every night of the week in a different city in Israel. You live in Eretz Yisrael. You can come to Ramot. You can come to Beit Vagan, Bnei Brak, whatever's convenient for you." And I said, "But is there anything on the web? Because, I listen to shiurim on my way to and from work every day. I'd love to listen to shiurim." He said, "Look, yeah, we have a few on different channels." He goes, "But if you know anyone that would help me, maybe we can build a website and I can have hundreds, of my shiurim online." And I said, "Done." And he goes, "What do you mean done? I mean, think about it, see if you know people, you get back to me." I said, "No, Harav, it's done." And he's like, "What do you mean it's done?" I said, "Harav, I'll take care of it." And he's like, "Really? You think you can do that? It might be expensive." I said, "Don't worry, whatever it is, taken care of." And then went back to Eretz Yisrael, spoke to a few people, and within a few weeks, we had a website up and running. The Rav didn't want me to put it under the Rav's name, because he said, he might be putting hair if he has his own website. So it was something generic, and kind of backed by the Lesnick family. I didn't want my name there, but the Rav said, "No, it has to be your website with my Torah." And eventually, thank God, over the last few years, we're able to change the name and upgrade the website. It's called minchasasher.com, and it has literally thousands of shiurim in Hebrew and English on a variety of topics. So that was how we started the relationship. And then it became like an annual event where we would go away in the summers together, either with my family and his family, or even really just, my wife, myself, and the Rav, and maybe his son. And we've gone to Austria, to Switzerland. The Rav has spent time. We have a vacation home in Netanya. The Rav has spent time there, with us as well during Ben Hazmanim. And when I go to the Rav Shir in Ramot, I would always drive the Rav home, and so I spend time with the Rav there. And I really was very fortunate to develop a very close relationship with Rav Weiss. Torah, I guess you could say that through the website is the main aspect, but I don't know, for some reason people kind of know that I guess I'm an avenue to Rav Weiss. So a lot of a lot of individuals, Rabbeim, were sending me, questions to the Rav. I speak to the Rav and see the Rav quite often. So I was able to make introductions. Like I said, I have a close relationship with Rav Rosner. So I actually introduced Rav Rosner I didn't have to introduce Rav Rosner to Rav Weiss. Rav Rosner always cited and quoted Rav Weiss in his shiurim, but I was able to kind of set up a meeting between the two. And since then, we've had quite a few meetings. Rav Rosner met him individually, but we also met three of us together to discuss a number of topics. So I think that was something which was advantageous, to me and I guess other people to help kind of get access to to a Gadol. And I don't know why I was zochet to this. I think, the Rav Weiss grew up in Brooklyn as well, and I guess maybe that part of him sort of relates to me. I kind of think I bring out the worst in him, but I kind of remind him of his childhood, and I feel privileged and honored to be able to have that relationship with the Rav. I think Rav Weiss once asked me a question. He goes, Shai, how old are you? And I told him my age, and I said, why do you want to know? And he said, well, I'm not sure if the relationship we have is a father-son or brothers. And he goes, we're 14 years apart. I guess we're like brothers. So
Wow.
I was taken aback. And even once I was in the car with Rav Rosner and Rav Weiss, and like Rav Rosner was asking questions, and he kept saying, Rebbe, what about this, and Rebbe this, and Rebbe that. And then we got to the destination, and I dropped Rav Rosner off, and I continued with Rav Weiss, and I said, I wrote Rav Weiss, I want to apologize, because when I speak to you, I never mentioned Rebbe, or whatever. And, I feel like I'm maybe disrespecting, and I'm sorry. And he says, no, don't worry about it. He's like, those rabbis, that's how they talk. Don't worry about it. He was like, so, but after that, I was actually a little more careful, to be less colloquial. When I saw Rav Rosner speaking to Rav Weiss in that manner, I was, I tried to be a little more respectful in the way that I addressed the Rav.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Stark Tank. This podcast addresses the unique challenges and opportunities of being a Ben Torah in the workforce. If you have enjoyed this episode or any of our episodes and want to help us grow the show, please give us a 5-star rating and a review on your podcast app. It's a small gesture that makes a big impact. And now, back to Stark Tank. And you have a very different project that you've undertaken on behalf or together with Rabbi Rosner. So maybe tell us a little bit about how that relationship started and what you ended up developing through that connection.
Sure. Well, I live in Beit Shemesh, and I've always been listening to Rav Rosner shiurim, both on the Daf Yomi and on the Parsha. And I found it to be really phenomenal, amazing, and I would share it with my family every Shabbos. And then some students, like say, some youth in the community approached me and said, listen, Mark, you've been giving shiurim or some talks on Friday nights for Bnei Akiva, and, we like them, and we want to know, now that we're going into the army, some of us will get out different weekends. It's a group of about 15 of us. Some went to Hesder Yeshiva, some went to Mechina, all different backgrounds, but we want to shiur on Shabbos. So when we come out on Shabbos, could you commit to give a shiur every Shabbos? And whoever's there, it's 5 of us, 10 of us, 15 of us, give us a shiur on whatever you want. And I was like, okay, fine, that'll be great. And so I decided to give a shiur on Parsha. They'd come over and we'd have a Shal Shuddis, and they'd give a shiur on shiur thoughts on the Parsha. And as my source, I would use a lot of the material that I have learned from Rav Rosner. And the shiur lasted for about 7 years until they all got married and moved out of the neighborhood. I actually was Masari Kedushin for a number of them, and we still stayed in touch. But during that time period, I realized that they really enjoyed the shiur and a lot of the materials from Rav Rosner. So I approached Rav Rosner and I said, listen, Harav, amazing material. It's so inspirational. People love your Torah. You got to write it down, because on Shabbos, you want to review the Parsha. You can't, listen online. Is there any way you can write your stuff down? And Rav Rosner said, listen, Mark, I'm so busy. I'm giving so many shiurim. I don't have time to write stuff down. It's all online. If you want to write something down, you write it down. So I thought about it and I said, look, I don't have time either, but I got the encouragement of my wife and family, and I said, okay, let me do it. And basically, at the time, Rav Rosner was giving shiurim, on an annual basis for about 12 years on every parsha. And the way his shiur works is not just one idea. He would take about, 10 to 15 ideas on each parsha and kind of little vorts. And so I listened to 12 years worth on every parsha. I picked what I thought were the most inspirational and came up with, about 7 to 10, different ideas on each parsha. And I wrote them up, and it took me about 2 years. And I remember I gave Bereshit Sefer Bereshit to Rav Rosner when I was done. He looked at me, he's like, "What's this?" And I'm like, "It's what I wrote up. He told me I should write it up." And he's like, "I thought you were going to give me like, I don't know, a few pages. I didn't expect a few hundred pages." And he went through it and he's like, "Wow, this is unbelievable." Like I was like, "Well, it's your stuff," and he basically said, "Look, I know I said this, but take this one out. I know a lot of my friends want to know what those bloopers were that didn't get in." And then there was some. He said, "Look, if you're going to talk about this parsha, you got to get the Beis Halevi in here or whatever." So he made some adjustments and made some comments and changes. And then we went to Koren, who was happy to publish it. And Baruch Hashem, we came out with the 2-volume set on the Torah. It was sold out. And then we actually, came to another project. Rav Rosner said to me when that was done, "So what's the next project?" And I'm like, "Next project? That was a major project." But knowing Rav Rosner, who's busy, giving shiurim nonstop, keeps on taking more stuff on him. He's now doing the Tzor the Rabbanan on Hilchos Shabbos, and he's doing, the Smichas Chava program. So I couldn't say no, and found, the 25th hour, I guess you could say, in each day. And then we put together the Haggadah. I wrote that based on shiurim I've heard from Rav Rosner over the years, and thank God that was a success. And now we're working on Moadim. We're working on it based on the shiurim that Rav Rosner was given on the Shalosh Regalim and other Chagim, Purim, Hanukkah. So it's a project that we keep continuing. In fact, I was at a wedding the other night, and Rav Rosner was dancing behind me, and he said to me, "Oh, by the way, I was thinking we should come out with a bencher." I was like, "Okay, great, but you got to give a shiur on the bencher first." So he's like, "Okay, no problem. I'm going to do that," and then we published it. So I enjoy that. For me, I mean, he's given tremendous fees to me. I think that really changed my life, my family's life through his Torah. It's just given me a tremendous amount of emunah and bitachon. And both, Rav Rosner and Rav Weiss had a tremendous impact on my life, my family's life. And for me, it was also incredible to put the two of them together.
You mentioned the great inspiration that you yourself have received, but also the shiurim really struck a chord with the young people who are listening. So can you go a little bit deeper into that? What about Rav Rosner's Torah had such a big impact?
I think they're inspirational. It's the message is it's not just this is what Ramban says, this is what this foreigner says, this is what even Rabbi Sacks. It's not just it's a plethora of sources. Also, he would bring Torah from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, from the Satmar Rebbe, from Nechama Leibowitz, from Rabbi Sacks, from Rabbi Lamb. It's like all walks of Torah, and even other Hasidic views. So I think it was some items that people weren't used to, and they didn't have access to before that. But also, each one has a message that you take home. It's not just, what does the Torah say? Okay, great, wonderful, finished, let's move on. But how does that talk to me? How does it speak to me? How can I include this in my daily life, and how does it change my life? And that's why I'm going to say inspirational. It's not just, oh, wow, this is good, it's nice. It's more, wow, that had meaning, and I'm going to incorporate that into my life. And that's, I think, what I've done, and I believe a lot of the people that we share the Torah with, they get that feeling as well. It moves you.
And could you give an example of something in your life that you took and applied, a vort or something that takes place on a regular basis in your life that was a result of this Torah?
Oh, I mean, there are a lot of things, but I think the overall theme is one of Torah being, I guess, the centerpiece of one's life, and that is that, it's whatever you do, you, like people say, what's your profession? And yes, I spend most of my day in the office, but I view myself as a Torah Jew, and the message Rav Rosner always gets across in his shiurim is, if you're learning even 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day, that could still be the main focus of your day, even though you might be in the office for 8, 9, or 10 hours. That's what you have to do. But you're a Torah Jew, and everything you do, you're always focused on Torah. It's sort of there. It's like he quotes Rav Soloveitchik. It's sort of latent. It's in there. Just like you think of your children. That's why you don't have to make a birchah Torah every time you learn. You make it once a day because Torah is always there. And so you just know you need to think what I'm doing today. When I'm negotiating this agreement, am I doing it? Like, what would the Torah say about this? It's not two separate things. Like you leave the Torah, bein kotlei beit hamidrash, and then now I'm sitting I'm in my office and I'm focusing on that. It's that Torah comes into the office, it comes into vacation, it comes into everything that I'm doing, and I always have to be thinking, what does the Torah say about this, and how am I supposed to act, and how am I supposed to respond? I think that's basically, I would say, that the message that I take away from that, and every vort that I hear from Rav Rosner.
Wow, I am really struck by the idea of giving support to a Gadol who has tremendous Torah and tremendous potential, but also could use help in different areas to bring their Torah to the masses. And I'm really impressed by the way you've done that. Are there any specific challenges that you found very difficult about having that role of being the supporting cast for the Talmid Chacham and his Torah?
So I want to make sure that I'm not misquoting or misciting, Rav Rosner. There have been situations. I also write up the Torah tidbits for Rosner and the Mizrahi, and Rav Rosner gives a shir, but he doesn't always give the title. And so I also I write it up and I kind of give the title. And one time I used a title which like Rav Rosner came to me afterwards. He says, people kind of. I got a few negative comments on this title, and I felt terrible because I was like, I thought it was a catchy, you want to get a catchy title in there, and it might have offended some people. So it's always like kind of to be careful and to recognize and to realize. I think for me, it's that thank God I give shirim and I share my own divrei Torah, but here it's like I'm doing this on behalf of Rav Rosner, and it's his Torah and his personality, and I try my best to kind of have his voice heard. And not my voice. I think the title was something with halachic schizophrenia, something like that, because it was dealing with. But I even forgot what parsha it was. But people didn't like the idea that we're using schizophrenia in that context. If they had a family member that had schizophrenia, and so I think sometimes I just have to be careful and cognizant. Even if I want a catchy title, it's not my name on the line. It's Rav Rosner's name, and so it's even more like sensitive to me that if someone thinks I made a mistake, fine. But here it's like Rav Rosner wrote that, and even though obviously he reviews everything I do and he makes changes and puts his own comments in, sometimes he might let things go, and I have to make sure that I'm protecting him from some sort of potential negative feedback.
Right. And I can imagine it probably takes a really great deal of humility to do what you're doing. Like I enjoy saying a nice chiddush and being able to, have my name on it. I believe there's a line that Rav Kook talks about. It's okay to have gava, haughtiness when it comes to Torah, and that is somewhat of a healthy usage of that midah. But to do what you're doing with a Rosner and with a Rosh Weiss is really to humble yourself, to bring yourself very, very low and behind the scenes to be the second fiddle for someone else's Torah. I'm assuming that the humility required is also something which, I don't know, if I were in that place would probably be a little bit of a challenge.
Look, on this firm that we've come out with, it's Shalom Rav Rosner's on the cover. I think it mentions inside that I'm the editor, a compiler and editor. My name's not on the cover because if my name was on the cover, I don't think it would sell any more copies. People aren't buying it because it's mine. They're buying it because it's Rav Rosner's Torah. They're on the website not because it's anything to do with me. They're because it's Rav Weiss's Torah. I think it's important in life to understand your place. If I can be a conduit, then that's great. If I'm asked to speak at a simcha, in shul, whatever, I could use my own Torah, and that's where people ask me to sort of relay my message. And even then, I used a lot of Torah from Rosner. But here it's obviously his Torah. Even Rav Rosner himself believes he's a conduit because a lot of times he's relaying Torah from other sources. So I'm even a step removed. I'm a conduit, relaying what he has relayed on other people's Torah. So definitely have no problem taking a back seat. What's important to me is that it's amazing Torah. Like I said, it had a tremendous impact on my life and my family's life, and I just love to get that spread throughout Klal Yisrael because I believe anyone who is able to partake in this Torah will feel the way I do, and I've gotten tremendous feedback. So for me, that's the most nachas I can get. The most enjoyment is just to know that people are using the work. I once spoke in shul and I used something from Shalom Rav and I forgot to cite the source. And afterwards, someone came over to me and they said, "Oh, what? I read that Rav Rosner has that in Shalom Rav, and he actually adds something else, whatever." And I was like, "Really? Oh, wow, it's great." So for me, it was great. That means you're reading it. That's all I wanted. That's all I don't need any recognition.
And what you said from Rav Rosner being he gathers a lot of sources and brings them together. I think that's actually a really profound point because when you think now that you mention it, it's the HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Torah, and everyone has their role in gathering, adding, delivering, repackaging. So it's all just one big system of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Torah, and we're all doing our part. So, okay, maybe some things are perceived as a little more personal and my Torah, my Chiddush, but it's really all just HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Torah, and we all have our different roles to play. I think that's a really, really cool point.
I think Rav Rosner once mentioned, I think when we had the launch for the Svarim, he said, he goes, this is an example of, it's actually where because I guess Mark took my Torah Shabbat pen turned into Torah Shebichtav. So, it's just like you said, just taking a role and taking the Torah, which belongs to everybody, and making it accessible.
Right. You mentioned before the website that Rav Asher Weiss started with your support. You together built this website, and I can't even start to tell you how many friends of mine have told me over the years how much they gained from it and enjoyed from it. And I'm sure that was not a small project just from a financial perspective. And I'm wondering if you have any advice. Someone like me, I, Baruch Hashem, am in a place where I give small amounts of tzedakah, not large amounts of tzedakah. And it would be cool to be able to then have maybe a different approach to tzedakah rather than just this thing I have to do and I want to be a nice guy. So do you have any advice for someone who is giving smaller scale tzedakah, but also making it a little more meaningful and have that builder's mentality with small amounts?
Wow, good question. When it comes to tzedakah, it's funny because I had a discussion with Rav Weiss about it, and actually Rav Weiss has several tshuvas on it also in I forgot which parsha he discusses it as well. Like I once asked about priorities in tzedakah, and the Torah doesn't, even halacha doesn't tell you, so in such fine lines is, the most important thing is to give to this and to give to that, because it's important that it speaks to you. Someone who unfortunately maybe a family member had a disease and was healed or wasn't healed, they might feel like, wow, I want to donate so that modern medicine can do something to help save their life or to help save other lives. Or someone might feel like they got a tremendous amount from a Torah individual. You want to help spread that Torah, or other handicaps or whatever it is. Different items speak to different people, and I think that's what's important is to try to make an impact in whatever you can. You have to decide what's important to me. But I also think, like the Rambam would say, is not to just give to one source. I think the Rambam mentions that if you have like $100, you don't give $100. Is it better to give $100 to one source or to give $10 to 10? I think it's better to spread it around. Kind of also like the Sefer Chinuch says, keep someone keeps giving tzedakah. But I think that the other layer to that is also just having, just like your unique investments, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. You want to diversify. I believe when it comes to tzedakah, you need to diversify as well. But at the same time, set your priorities. Not everybody gives the same amount. Right? Rav Rosner cited somebody saying, it says, Patoach tiftach et yadcha. Why do you have to open it? When your fingers are closed, each finger, it might look like the same height, but when you open it, each finger is a different height, different length. And same thing here. You're supposed to give tzedakah, but you don't have to give the same amount to everybody. So I think no matter what you have, you can have an impact by at least donating to the causes, or donating more to the causes that have more meaning to you, and trying to see what you could do. Tzedakah is not just about money; it's also about time. I once joked around. I ran a pula in a Bnei Akiva one Friday night. And I said, hey guys, guess what? I just hit the lottery. I made, 10 million. I decided I'm donating it all. And they're like, wow, that's amazing. It's great. I said, but I need your help. I want everybody to decide, where they're giving the tzedakah to, and then we'll discuss it. And so, they went into different groups, came back and said, look, we should give it to, the people that just got out of, that they relocated. We should give it to the people that are sick. We should give it to certain schools. And everybody was arguing different things. And then at the end I said, guys, guess what? I was joking. I didn't hit the lottery. We don't have the money to spend. I said, but if these are important to you and you don't have money, then dedicate your time. Maybe you can go and visit a hospital. Maybe you can go and help, pack packages for these people. Tzedakah is not just about money. It's about action and chesed. And so, these are important to me. So it's not just the money. It's helping Rav Weiss, helping Rav Rosner, like you said, in other ways too. For me, it's important. Somebody might say, "Okay, great, Rav Rosner, here's money. Go write a book." I said, I help financially, but I also tried to do what else I could. If it's important enough to me, then do more than the dollars.
Amazing. So for listeners who may not know, I am Rav Rosner's nephew. I've known him for the last 29 years of my life. And I've had an up-close and personal view of his greatness and family vacations where he would be preparing the daf and giving the daf, and we had to be quiet in the other room playing because he was recording a daf yomi in a hotel room somewhere in wherever it was. So I've had that great opportunity. But I'm wondering, from your connection with Rav Asher Weiss, if you have any behind-the-scenes glimpses of his greatness that you could share with us.
Actually, most people, I guess, know Rav Weiss through his Torah. Thank God I was able to be with him. I guess in Pirkei Avot it says, you should be by afar ragleihem. What I've seen is just tremendous individual. I think I remember someone I was once, I think it was Rabbi David was with Rav Weiss after Rav Weiss to give a shiur in Beit Shemesh, and I remember that Rav David went up to him afterwards, and the Rav had mentioned something about the Klozberg Rebbe, who was his Rebbe. And so he said, "Could you tell me something about the Klozberg Rebbe? Like, how do you personify him?" And Rav Weiss said, "He's an Ohev Yisrael." And if I had to personify Rav Weiss, I would say not only is he an Ohev Yisrael, but he's an Ohev Habriot. Rav Weiss is somebody who, if you go to his shiur, you'll see there are people. I mean, I've been there where there are people wearing army uniforms at the same time as shtreimels, and he brings everybody together because everybody just loves his Torah. He's looking for the truth, and he also gives shiurim in Hesder yeshivas and in Haredi yeshivas everywhere. Everybody's you're a ben Torah. It doesn't matter, what your hashkafa is. But more than that, especially on the summer trips, we've been hiking in the Alps, and I remember we got to the top, and there was this place where you can get drinks, and there was a group of individuals. They looked like a motorcycle gang with tattoos all over their bodies, and I was kind of scared to even walk in there because Rav Weiss, he looked like a rabbin. He's wearing his black coat, and even though he's hiking, he wasn't wearing hiking garb, and looked like a very big rabbinical figure. And I was like, I don't know, these guys are going to start up with us. To me, they look like neo-Nazis. And they were watching a big screen TV with some soccer game going on. And Rav Weiss just walked over to them, and as they're drinking their beer, and he said, who's playing? It looks like a big game. What teams are involved? And they started talking to him, and he just befriended them. And it was like such a kiddush Hashem. And on another trip, we were taking a cable car up, and there were a bunch of men and women from Australia, and they were talking. And I saw the way they looked at Rav Weiss initially, like a strange breed. And then they looked outside the cable car, and we saw some animals below, and they said, "Oh, that's whatever animal." And then Rav Weiss just looked at them and said, "Excuse me, I think it's," and I forgot what it was, but he said something else. And they looked at him like, "What? Like, we never heard of that before." And he goes, "You might want to Google it." And so one of the women there Googled it and said, "Oh my God, the rabbi's correct." And then, he started a conversation with the group. And I was amazing because I had come the previous week. I was in a kosher program in Austria where there was some more. And when he walked into the lobby, they had to clear it from all the men and women because, God forbid, he would look at another woman. And here, Rav Weiss is speaking to these non-Jews, men and women, and just befriended them. And when we got off at the destination, they basically said, "Rabbi, you're a very wise man. You're a very kind man. Enjoy the rest of your vacation." And the impact he had on them, they're going to be, they're going to just view Judaism as, in a much more favorable light than they probably did before, based on the look they gave him when he walked in and the look they gave him when they left us. And that's who he is. He's just such an amazing individual. And I know so many stories of chesed that he does for, almanot and yitomim. And it's just, I don't want to say his chesed, is even greater than his Torah, but it's unbelievable that people just don't know and don't recognize what he does. And I've learned so much just from being with him, even I would say more so than from the Sfarim and the Shiurim that I've heard.
For the final question, do you have any parting thoughts or advice, practical things that someone who's listening to this and says, wow, this is such a powerful idea of being able to help a Talmid Chacham bring his Torah out, support him and support his message? What are some of your parting thoughts and advice that we haven't yet touched on for someone who might hear that?
Well, first of all, I think is not to be scared. Sometimes people are like in super awe and, feel like these are like malachim and they're not approachable. That vacation that I was on, it was a whole group. There were over, I don't know, dozens of families that were there from all walks of life. There were Haredim, there were Dati Leumi, and everybody listened and loved his shiurim. But I think out of that trip, I was the only one who developed a relationship with him because I had I guess you can call it the guts or the chutzpah to walk over and to have discussions with the Rav. So I think number one is not to be afraid to approach them and view them as the Gadolim, and you have to respect them and be in awe of them. But you can also communicate with them and just see what you can do to help them. Without even sometimes you can ask them say, Rav, look, I love you, Torah. What can I do to help you, or offer to do things to sort of, to help them. Again, Rav Rosner has tons of Hasidim. He can call them Rav Rosner Hasidim. Honestly, I live in Beit Shemesh, but I don't even daven in Rav Rosner's shul, but I'm so attracted to his Torah that I approached him about that. So I don't think anyone has to feel like, it's not me. There are people that are closer to him. There are people that know him better. There are probably people that heard more shiurim and that hear him on every Shabbos than I don't hear him. But I just felt like, look, there's something that has to get done. So let me do it. I think that's the most important thing is not to be afraid to approach Gadolim and just to see what you can do to help them in any way you can. Just one thing, I just, as we're talking, the thing about the influence that Rav Weiss had on me also on my professional life. I'm not a chassid that I ask him before we make investments, but more, I'm the only dati guy in the office. We have it's a private equity fund, and my partners are all chilonim, and they asked me once to. I do it every year now, but the first time they asked me, say, before Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, we have a l'chaim. Why don't you say a few words? Give us a Devar Torah. And I was like, oh my God, what kind of Devar Torah do you give to these guys? They're all chilonim. I tell them you got to do tshuva, they'll throw me out the door. So I sat down with Rav Weiss and I said, what do I tell them? Like before Rosh Hashanah, what message can I give them that'll be meaningful? And he kind of just said to me, he's like, listen, Winston Churchill once said, I love to learn, but I hate being taught. And I was shocked that he even quoted like Winston Churchill. And he explained to me, he's like, people like to learn, but they don't like being taught. You can't give them musar. He's like, don't talk to them about God. Just talk to them about Ben Adam L'Chavero. And I ended up giving a Devar Torah that spoke to them, and they said, that's amazing, but where does it say that in the Torah? And I'm like, it says that in the Torah. It was, I basically told them, I said, look, just like we invest in companies, and at the end of the year, we review how they've done and what their projections are for the future and how we can improve. We need to take stock of ourselves, and that's what Rosh Hashanah is all about. And I can say, thank God, based on Rav Weiss's guidance, and he said to me, they're going to look at you as under a magnifying glass. So everything you do has to be yashar, and realize that you represent Torah Jews to them. So you have to make sure that they respect you in every way. And I try to do that. And I think that's the best way to bridge the gap is the mutual respect that we've developed here over the years. And it's Rav Weiss basically saying you need to respect other people. You can't force anything on other people, but try to show them the beauty of the Torah, and they want to understand more. And I actually now have a chavrusa with 3 of my partners once a week. And I can't say they're Shomer Shabbos, but even though they're not Shomer Shabbos, there's no emails or WhatsApp on our group, on our team group on Shabbat or Yom Tov. And I never requested it, but out of respect for me, they don't do that. So I think people might have challenges working in a non-religious environment, whether it's in Israel or America. But I think the key there is not to force things. It's just mutual respect, and eventually that can help sort of bridge the gap in the office and hopefully bridge the gap in society.
Okay, Marc, this has been really special. I really appreciate all of your insights today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks a lot, Yaakov, and it was a pleasure. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Start Take. If you're still listening at this point, that means that you've enjoyed. Please take a moment to give us a 5-star review, make sure that you're subscribed, and share this episode with a few friends. I want to thank our production team, Yoni Schwartz, Yitzhak Schmidman, and Yossi Book. Until next week, keep on steiging, Chevra.